Another significant example of the Prophet Muhammad's commitment to justice involves the case of the Jewish tribe of Banu Qurayza during the Battle of the Trench, also known as the Battle of Khandak, in 627 CE. During the Battle of the Trench, the Banu Qurayza, a Jewish tribe living in Medina, initially agreed to support the Muslims against the Confederate armies of the Quraysh and their allies. However, they later broke their treaty and sided with the Quraysh, posing a serious threat to the Muslim community. Following the end of the battle, the Banu Qurayza surrendered to the Muslim forces after a siege. The Prophet Muhammad appointed Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, a prominent Muslim leader and ally of the Banu Aus tribe, with whom the Banu Qurayza had ties, to arbitrate the fate of the Banu Qurayza. Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, after consulting with his allies and the Qurayza themselves, delivered his verdict according to Jewish law, the Torah, as was agreed upon by both parties prior to the siege. The judgment was that the men of Banu Qurayza who had taken up arms against the Muslims would be executed, while the women and children would be spared and taken as captives. This judgment, though severe by modern standards, was in accordance with the norms of warfare during that time and the laws prevalent in the region. It's important to note that the execution of the men of Banu Qurayza was not based on their religion but rather their actions as combatants during the conflict. While this incident is often viewed as controversial, it underscores the Prophet Muhammad's commitment to upholding agreements and treaties, as well as his adherence to the principles of justice and fairness, even in difficult and challenging circumstances. It also demonstrates his respect for the legal traditions of different communities living within the Islamic State, as evidenced by the use of Jewish law in the arbitration process. Certainly, shura, which means consultation, is a fundamental principle in Islamic governance and decision-making. The Prophet Muhammad himself frequently practiced shura, seeking the advice and opinions of his companions on various matters. Here are some notable examples. Migration to Medina. Before the Prophet Muhammad and his followers migrated from Mecca to Medina, known as the Hijra, he consulted with his closest companions and allies. This migration was a significant decision with far-reaching implications for the Muslim community. The Prophet sought the advice of his companions on when and how to undertake this journey, demonstrating his commitment to collective decision-making and consultation. The Battle of Uhud. Prior to the Battle of Uhud, the Prophet Muhammad consulted with his companions on the strategy to be adopted in facing the Quraysh army. He sought their opinions on whether to engage the enemy outside the city of Medina or to defend the city itself. Although the ultimate decision rested with the Prophet, he valued the input of his companions and considered their advice in his decision-making process. The Treaty of Hudaybiyah. During the negotiations for the Treaty of Hudaybiyah between the Muslims and the Quraysh, the Prophet Muhammad consulted with his companions on whether to accept the terms proposed by the Quraysh. Despite initial reluctance and disagreement among some of his followers, the Prophet listened to their concerns and explained the wisdom behind accepting the treaty. Ultimately, the treaty led to a period of peace and stability, highlighting the importance of consultation in diplomatic matters. Appointment of leaders. The Prophet Muhammad often consulted with his companions when appointing leaders or delegating responsibilities within the Muslim community. For example, he sought the advice of his companions when appointing governors or leaders for various regions conquered during the expansion of Islam. Distribution of spoils of war. When distributing the spoils of war or other resources acquired by the Muslim community, the Prophet Muhammad would consult with his companions on the equitable distribution among the fighters and the community. He would seek their advice on how to allocate resources fairly, ensuring that everyone received their due share. These examples demonstrate how the Prophet Muhammad practiced shura in various aspects of governance, seeking the counsel and input of his companions in decision-making processes. Shura remains a guiding principle in Islamic governance, emphasizing the importance of consultation, consensus building, and collective decision-making for the well-being of the community.